Good evening. I would like to call to order the October 10th, 2023 regular school board meeting of the Community Union School District 303 at 6:01 p.m. Ms. Marsan, would you please take roll?
Yes, Mrs. Bell is absent right now. Mr. Kuschert?
Here.
Mr. Lackner?
Here.
Mr. Lentz?
Here.
Mrs. McCabe?
Here.
Mr. McNally?
Here.
And Mrs. Fairgrave?
Here. Please stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, moving to section 2 of the agenda, citizen comments. I believe we do not have any citizen comments at this time. So next we will move to section 3, which is reports to the board. Dr. Gordon, would you like to start us off?
Yeah. Thank you so much. As our community knows that we're starting that process, and tonight the board will be approving the boundary criteria and the guiding principles for that work a little later on tonight. And for me, I just want to continue to reiterate to our community and to our staff that the boundaries will impact each and every one of our schools. The different levels of that impact, the percentage of movement, that will differ from school to school. But it really is important that we continue to send that message out there. The other thing that we keep hearing occasionally is that there is some assumption out there that lines have already been drawn. That could be nothing further from the truth. The board, the administration, we don't draw the lines. We actually are engaging with our partner, RSP and Associates, to do that work. And they can't even start that work until the board sends them the criteria and the guiding principles tonight. So that's work that they will do. But I really want to highlight 2 important dates, November 28th and November 29th. Those are dates that we will be opening up to our community at North and East. And that's where the RSP and Associates will bring different scenarios to our community, so our community can engage with that. And when I mean our community, I mean our staff, our families, the larger community to come out and hear the presentation from RSP and others, and then literally be able to engage in those scenarios and what does it look like, and be able to offer feedback. We'll also be providing a survey through RSP to our broader community, because we recognize not everyone can make those 2 evenings, but we want to try to engage as many people as possible in this boundary process. Again, because we know it's going to impact each and every one of our schools, it's really critical that we provide these opportunities for feedback. In the coming days, we're going to be launching on our D303 website our own boundaries website plan that will really walk anybody who links into it a nice timeline, the processes, the criteria that the board will be voting on tonight. So making sure everybody kind of understands that big picture of the dates and times. November 28th, which is going to be at North, and then November 29th at East High School, but it will all be there, and we'll continue to put out a lot of information to our staff and to our community so they can be as engaged as possible on these topics. We really do want a lot of feedback as we're going down this process of engagement. We recognize it's challenging. This will be a challenging time. I've been a part of different boundaries, and it's hard. It's hard to see that my elementary, middle, or high school, I may not be in that same place that I was. So we recognize that as a board, as administration, these next few months are going to be really challenging for our district, for our staff, because a number of our staff members will need to move to different sites as well. And that's going to be really challenging for our staff. So we recognize that going in and trying to do everything possible to support our staff and our community. in that end, we're going to be working, Marcy Conlon, our Chief Human Resource Officer, and Justin Attaway, our Chief Financial Officer, and myself. We're going to be engaging our staff through a webinar to make sure that they understand the process of the boundary changes and how that impacts our staff, because it's a different impact to our staff than it is to our families. But we're going to be reaching out, making sure that our staff know where we're at. And then we're going to be doing, I'll be doing a short video that will go out to our families, really kind of going through that same piece. So everybody knows the best information that we have at this time going forward. I think the piece that we continue to learn, the more information we can get out there, the better our community is going to be. So we're really leaning in hard to our communication. Hopefully we've been doing that. Well, we need to always continue to improve, but as Scott Harvey, our Chief Communication Officer, he's launching that website tomorrow. Part of that communication, especially to our families, is around the shortened elementary day. For many that they haven't heard that, that came through negotiations, but it wasn't because of the negotiations. We'll really talk to our community about the why behind that. The reduction of some of the elementary specials offerings that we're providing our students and the why behind that work. So that'll be a lot of that piece that I'll be sending out to our community, so they have a deeper understanding of the why behind that work, from going from a 7-hour day to a 6-hour, 20-minute elementary day. So we want to continue our communication, making sure people understand the why, the rationale behind it, on the elementary day, and then going forward, especially with the boundary changes. I think that was it for me.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving to item B, board member reports on committee meetings. Can we start with Learning and Teaching Committee?
We sure can. Okay, so Learning Teaching met back on Monday, September 18th. We had a really robust conversation. As always, we encourage folks to go back and listen to the recordings and or take a look at the presentations that are available as well. But just a couple of key takeaways from that. We discussed the boundary update with Davis Richmond community. So the administration hosted a series of meetings with families and staff of Davis and Richmond, discussed kind of the history of the partnership, discussed considerations being made, as well as in an effort to receive feedback. We cannot explain enough, as Paul mentioned, we welcome the feedback. We know there are challenging decisions. We know that folks are going to be impacted, and we want to make the best possible decisions we can for the greater good of the community. So please keep that feedback coming, and please do review that information, because a survey was also distributed in an effort to garner additional feedback there. The next item was the high school experience. So we were talking a little bit about the key deliverables and the timelines that the board has put in place for the 23-24 goals. This includes an audit of the high school academic experience as well as the academic outcomes. We all want to see better outcomes for this district. So by November, I believe it's November, we'll see a review of the catalog and take place to assess kind of the AP program, dual credit, and some of those other programs. And then recommendations will be made at the tail end of the year in April of 2024, if I'm not mistaken. Those are the dates. Increasing the student achievement gap for particular student groups was the third topic of discussion. That is also part of the 23-24 goals. So the board is focused on improving student achievement for multilingual learners. The administration will continue to review we had an equity audit from the Consortium for Educational Change and Chapin Hall as well, in an effort to try and identify some of those root causes in the achievement gaps. And ideally, we'd like to start to see the close in those gaps. And then lastly, the student achievement report. So we went over the format, what some of the board members might like to see, both with the format of the report itself, as well as the delivery of the information. That will be coming up here in November, where we'll review the annual student achievement report. The next Learning and Teaching was supposed to be October 2nd, but that was canceled. That was a special Learning and Teaching. The next one, I believe, is Monday next week, October 16th at 5:30, right here in this great place.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that. And just, we do have for the record that Ms. Bell joined Okay, thank you. Okay, back to committee updates, business services.
Absolutely. So we started off last business services meeting with our normal review of the Mid Valley and D303 financial reports. And then we got into a fairly spirited discussion about the boundary process. Paul's already kind of walked through a bit of that. There were a couple of items, and again, that's going to be for vote tonight on there that we discussed. Namely, a key one was alleviating the space needs and utilization needs that we have and moving that to the top of our list. Because again, that is what started this whole process. There was also some good discussion around the secondary issues and what we wanted to do with, feeder systems from our middle schools into the high schools and elementary schools to middle schools and keeping neighborhoods together. So some very good discussion there. Again, that is for action tonight. We also got a summer construction update. So there is some good progress that's been made so far with the planning for the changes at Lincoln as well as Haynes. And that is moving along. And then there was a long-term debt process update that we got that we're going to be taking action on tonight as well. So that's the issuance of debt to pay for the construction that we've already talked about at Haynes and at Lincoln. And then there was a final item that is I believe it's in the consent agenda tonight. That's the video editing software that we use in all of our schools. So that's the update for business services.
Thank you for that, Mr. Lentz. Any other additions or points of note related to committee? Okay. All right. So moving to section 4 on the agenda, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda items 4A through 4N?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Lentz and Mr. McNally the second. Is there any discussion at this time? Okay, Ms. Marsan, please take the roll call vote.
Mr. Kuschert,
Yes.
Mr. Lackner,
Yes.
Mr. Lentz,
Yes.
Mrs. McCabe,
Yes.
Mr. McNally,
Yes.
Mrs. Bell,
Yes.
and Mrs. Fairgrave.
Yes. Motion passes 7-0. Now moving to section 5 of the agenda for action. Item A, guiding principles, boundary criteria. Can I have a motion to approve the guiding principles and boundary criteria for the development and analysis of boundary scenarios?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Lentz. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Lackner. Any discussion at this time? Okay, Ms. Marsan, would you please take the roll call vote?
Yes, Mr. Lackner,
Yes.
Mr. Lentz,
Yes.
Mrs. McCabe,
Yes.
Mr. McNally,
Yes.
Mrs. Bell,
Yes.
Mr. Kuschert,
Yes.
and Mrs. Fairgrave.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Item B, resolution declaring the intention to issue 25 million working cash fund bonds of the district for the purpose of increasing the working cash fund of the district and directing that notice of such intention be published in the manner provided by law. Can I have a motion to approve the resolution declaring the intention to issue 25 million working cash fund bonds of the district for the purpose of increasing the working cash fund of the district and directing that notice of such intention be published in the manner provided by law?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. McCabe. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Lentz. Any discussion at this time? Okay, Ms. Marsan, would you please take the roll call vote?
Yes, Mr. Lentz,
Yes.
Mrs. McCabe,
Yes.
Mr. McNally,
Yes.
Mrs. Bell,
Yes.
Mr. Kuschert,
Yes.
Mr. Lackner,
Yes.
Mrs. Fairgrave.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Item C, board member registration, Kishwaukee Division meeting. Can I have a motion to approve the board member registration for the Kishwaukee Division meeting?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. McCabe. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Lackner. Any discussion at this time? Okay, Ms. Marsan, would you please take the roll call vote?
Yes, Mrs. McCabe,
Yes.
Mr. McNally,
Yes.
Mrs. Bell,
Yes.
Mr. Kuschert,
Yes.
Mr. Lackner,
Yes.
Mr. Lentz,
Yes.
and Mrs. Fairgrave.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Section 6 for information on the agenda. There are there are 5 items for information only. The first 4 are our standing for your information only items. The last item is the IASB 2023 Resolutions Committee Report, and it is for review only right now. For preparation, we will be taking action at our November 13th board meeting related to those resolutions. Any new business?
Oh, I had
Yes.
a question on the FOIAs. There seemed to be a lot of time, maybe this is later, but there seemed to be a lot of time for providing some of the salary stuff in there and a lot of cost to the district there. I know we're looking at the new HR system. Is that related? Is it like?
I think in the future will help, but currently it does take time pulling that information, but I can get you more, I can send the
Okay.
board more details on that, but there is some significant time required to pull those FOIAs. Most of them are, they're looking very specifically, and we have to meet the exact request of the FOIA. And oftentimes our information just isn't downloaded in that exact manner. So it takes time for our team to get it in a format that they're requesting.
Got
But
it.
I'll follow up with you tomorrow on that. a
Is
little
that,
bit more
that's
detail.
also something that you can share those, like that request with us? Cause I'm curious
Oh,
when I saw
the
those.
general request on that one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm super curious about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
I do think just one additional comment on that too, to note, certainly we can't, and nor should we control what comes in terms of FOIA requests, but that particular information that is available to the public, either through online research or through our personnel reports historically too. So-
Correct.
So is the intent then to house it differently moving forward, just so any such requests were a bit more efficient with?
I'll have to sit
gathering
with
data?
Marcy on that one. If in the future, will it be a different way of accounting for it and reporting out? Honestly, it's mainly in the manner in which people FOIA information more than anything else, but I'll get a full analysis from Marcy. Marcy's probably sitting over there like, no, that's not how it's done.
Okay.
Just a question, the information regarding FOIA requests, each time we have them in our board meetings, that's part of the board packet that becomes available online, that is public, correct?
Correct.
That's what I
Each
thought.
time,
I
each
just
time.
wanted to be sure so that the
Yep.
public knows they can just go right on
Yeah, this isn't anything new.
our information
Yeah.
and you can see what's being requested. Okay. great.
Yeah, and sometimes there's a large number and sometimes there's 2 or 3 only. So.
Right.
It probably drew your attention to that with the number.
Yeah.
It did,
Yeah.
and that's where, like, I know in the FOIA request that comes back to the board that shows is what is requested. I'd like to actually see the output. So just to be clear on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any new business? Okay. Any citizen comments? Okay, we do not have any citizen comments either at this time. So can I now have a motion to go into closed session for the purpose of litigation when an action against, affecting, or on behalf of the particular public body has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the public body finds that an action is probable or imminent, in which case the basis for the finding shall be recorded and entered into the minutes of the closed meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Lackner. Is there a second?
Second.
What, Mrs. Bell? I'm sorry. Ms. Marsan, would you please take the roll call vote?
Yes, Mr. McNally,
Yes.
Mrs. Bell,
Yes.
Mr. Kuschert,
Yes.
Mr. Lackner,
Yes.
Mr. Lentz,
Yes.
Mrs. McCabe,
Yes.
Mrs. Fairgrave.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Open session is adjourned at 6:20 PM.